1930s, New York had more than 1,500 Jewish delis. Today, there are only about 20 left. But losing the Carnegie was the one that left a scar on the city's psyche. And behind the rise of this famous New York institution was Sandy Levine, husband to the Carnegie heiress, a man who felt he was settling for scraps when he deserved so much more. Sandy was the face of the deli, working from early morning until late at night. Day after day, he did all the hard work, publicity, and media appearances.
Tell us how you've been making your matzo ball soup.
Use approximately 1.5 cups of water. Next step is salt. We use 1 spoon.
It's a lot of matzo balls.
No one would argue that it was Sandy who transformed the 200-seat Carnegie Deli into a corned beef, pastrami, and cheesecake empire.
Business was going great. He was a wonderful personality, Sandy, and he was very good at it.
Now comes the secret. As you can see right now, he just added more matzo meal because he felt that he didn't have enough.
And the Carnegie Deli had become like the Statue of Liberty. It had become a destination. And so people went in, got the big mile-high sandwiches, took a selfie and sent it home. He had taken a small little retail operation that couldn't grow really larger and turned it into a national phenomenon.
They had what is arguably the best cheesecake recipe in New York. It was just a masterpiece. And people lined up for hours just to get their hands on this thing.
The head buyer at Omaha Steaks would come into Manhattan on a buying trip, and he said, I love these cheesecakes. Can you bake them for me? And Sandy said, we do 100 a week. And the Omaha Steaks says, I need 100,000 a year. He says, whenever you go develop that, you let me know. So they started to do 100,000 cheesecakes a year for Omaha Steaks. They did rugalo, which is the little Jewish cookie. And then they started to cure more meats. And so the wholesale business took off. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people tasted Carnegie Deli for the first time.
Sandy spearheaded the move to partner with Omaha Steaks and built the manufacturing plant for their famous cheesecake. He oversaw their global expansion, including locations like Las Vegas. And yet, despite the success, Sandy was never treated like a member of the family, or at least paid like one.
If I had, for years, put my life and blood into the business and expanded it significantly, taking it to heights of profit that had never been before, and no one even once offered me some share, I would start to feel disrespected. And I'm positive that he had gone to Milton and said, look, Milton, I'm working 70 hours a week here. I think that I deserve some equity in the business. And Milton said no.
Sandy is never offered even a small percentage of the business he built. And as the humiliation builds with each passing year, he starts to look for comfort, eventually finding it behind the hostess stand.
Sandy had this affair for almost 20 years with the hostess who worked every day.
Penkei was a longtime server at the deli. She was hired by Marion's father, Milton Parker, and he loved her. I mean, so much so that he set her up in a rent-regulated apartment above the deli. I mean, this in New York City is a big deal because everything's so expensive. So she paid almost nothing to live in Midtown Manhattan. And she was a very valued part of the Carnegie team.
Sandy's affair with an employee living upstairs is far from the most shocking story to involve those deli-owned apartments.
One of the apartments, evidently, was rented by an actress by the name of Jennifer Stahl. She was in Dirty Dancing, and she not only used it as a recording studio, but rumor has it, she was selling some weed out of there as well.
In 2001, 5 people are shot at Jennifer Stahl's apartment in the building. 3 die. The tabloids label it the Carnegie Deli Massacre, even though the deli had nothing to do with it.
1.5 pounds of weed was stolen and $800. They executed Jennifer Stahl and 4 other people, but 2 were left alive, and that's how they got caught. The culprits were Sean Sally and Andre Dre Smith. They were both sentenced to 3 25-year sentences, which is effectively a life sentence. They weren't incredibly opulent luxury penthouses. These were regular New York apartment buildings. Penkei's in one, Jennifer Stahl's in another, drug dealers are present. It's New York City.
Where it's hard to find a place that hasn't had a shooting. So the deli and Sandy's affair barely misses a beat. He and Penkei are soon carrying on just as before.
Here's what I found through the years. No one ever knows what goes on in someone else's house. I've seen people I was mortified, but you don't know what goes on in their home.
All the employees of the deli knew that this affair was going on. Marion was not in the deli every single day, so everybody knew except Marion. You know, I felt for her. Like, Sandy Levine was the love of her life. She got a license plate that said meant to be. I mean, it was like, it was sad.
But the mystery is how this could have gone on for so long without the staff mentioning it to anybody.
With the whole staff aware of the infidelity, Marion either didn't notice or chose not to. Had she cared to look, there were certainly breadcrumbs that could have led her to the truth.
Penkei, who was living on a waitress's salary, not only had a $600,000 home in Astoria, she also opened a Thai restaurant in Astoria. And both Sandy and Marion went to the opening of that restaurant. And Marion was like, how were you able to afford this?
Where did the money come from? Was Sandy helping pay for Penkei's house and her new Thai restaurant? If he was, it likely wasn't from his relatively modest paycheck.
Sandy was only a salaried employee, but Milton wanted to keep the entire Carnegie Deli operation within the family. So I think this started to grate on Sandy. You know, that SOB Milton, he's cheated me out of this and that, because in a family-owned business, when a son-in-law comes in or a daughter-in-law or the manager, they work hard and their reward is not just monetary, it's to feel that they have a share of the business.
So, was it an act of love for his mistress, revenge on his wife's family, or a combo platter of both? Whatever Sandy's actual feelings or moral failings, his work ethic was never in question.
I think Sandy felt really betrayed when he wasn't being fully brought into the family operation, because he put in many hours a day for many years at that deli. There were other clues that perhaps Penkei was having an affair with Sandy. One was Marion once spotted a diamond ring on Penkei's wedding finger, and she actually said to her, Penkei, you know, you shouldn't wear that because you're not going to attract any men if they think you're married. Sadly, it was probably Sandy who had given her the ring.
But the most valuable thing Sandy gives Penkei, or so he thinks, isn't the ring, the funding for the restaurant, or even the house. It was, in deli terms, the crown jewels of the operation and the ultimate smoked meat betrayal.
He'd stolen the cheesecake recipe because Penkei wanted to set up a deli in Bangkok. She was from Thailand, and they needed the cheesecake recipe, they needed the pastrami recipe, and they needed the corned beef recipe. And Sandy Levine had allegedly given those recipes to his paramour.
After this is ready to go, we start adding our seasonings. We add some black pepper, our salt, chicken base, very, very important.
It was the worst kind of betrayal. I mean, I think Sandy betrayed New York City.
Let's get out of here. Too many ingredients, too many secrets. Now I'm giving you one of our secret recipes. Normally we don't do this, but I like her.
Sandy Levine is taking revenge on his wife Marion and her father Milton for refusing to ever bring him into the ownership of the deli.
Now everything comes together.
His weapon of choice, deli hostess and want-to-be restaurateur Penkei.
These two people who had the trust of Marion's father and Marion had gone behind her back. Okay, they'd had an affair, but then they were like taking the recipes.
Marion, she'd taken Sandy from business in retail and had turned him into Sandy Levine of the Carnegie Deli. And everybody knew who Sandy was if you went into the Carnegie Deli. He became a part of the culture in Manhattan. And for this gift that she'd given him, the betrayal, the absolute betrayal, he gave the hostess the recipes for the Carnegie Deli.
She actually set up a restaurant in Bangkok.
Behind Marion's back, Penkei and her family opened a deli in Bangkok, originally named the Carnegie Deli, Thailand. At some point, it changed to the New York Cheesecake Deli. It would look like a simple plan. Just replicate the success of the New York operation using the name and the stolen recipes from the original. But it turns out, the secret to running a successful deli isn't something you can just scribble down on a piece of paper. First, you really need to know your meat.
One of the great quotes from Milton Parker when the deli was robbed was, the schmucks took the money, but they left the pastrami. Like, the pastrami was, more valuable to him than the cash. And I think in that sense, the recipes, if you will, of this great deli, taking that was almost worse than having the affair.
When you think about it, Jewish deli in Thailand is more than an oxymoron. I mean, it really doesn't sound, and it never really succeeded in any way.
Just because you got the recipe doesn't mean you can do it, And it is hard. It is hard to get this right, and every piece of meat is different. Even if you can do the curing and the smoking, it's still not the same when you do the boiling and the steaming and the cutting. It's just not the same. So you want to take my recipe and you want to try it, go for it. Let me know. Call me when it fails, and I'll talk you through why you failed.
The New York Cheesecake Deli in Thailand, with its, let's say, borrowed recipes, never has the booming success of its predecessor, which wasn't hard to see coming. As any deli person will tell you, recipes are just the start. There are tricks to this particular trade, tricks that will cost you if you're not careful.
I don't like to cheat anyone. I don't like to be cheated. And that's how I found out about vendors cheating delis, by going into a barrel of pickles, taking a stick and hitting it down. I found a block of ice on the bottom of the barrel. Now, the barrel is about 55 gallons. So by the time you get down to the bottom, it's been defrosted. And that's how I found out my pickle man was cheating me. I threw him out and I went to another pickle man. You can only do that to me once.
There's a lot of scummy people out there. I'll get deliveries where there's extra blood in there, and because I'm paying by the pound, and I have to go in and drain it and say, you I got you. No, I'm not paying for this. You have these long-standing relationships. You're gonna f up a relationship over an extra $1.20, good for you. What'd you gain there? If you push down, more weight, right? So if I were to put it down, would I push it down a little bit harder? If it's actually 1 1/4, would I make it when I'm putting it down? Oh, let's see, it's 2, yeah. Those guys are despicable. You could play some games with that, but that's not why we're in business for 133 years.
Trying to make an extra buck has been baked into the culture of New York delis for decades. But whether Sandy brought those ideas with him or learned on the job, he's certainly willing to take it to a whole nother level of wrong.
He did all kinds of crazy stuff that I couldn't believe when he told me. He would fire someone after 6 months because after 6 months they have to become a union member. I mean, he told me stories that I said, this guy has no conscience. But he's a funny guy.
In 2009, Milton Parker passes away, leaving full control of the deli to his daughter Marion. But if Sandy thought this might finally be the moment where he gets a slice of the pie, or cheesecake, if you will, he's mistaken. Still stuck with just his salary and no share of the business, he starts to lash out even more. First, there was the infamous job title he gave himself.
When I first met Sandy, he gave me this business card, and under it in bold are the initials MBD. Now, when I ask people what does that mean, they go, Masters of Business Delicatessen, Masters of Borscht Delivery, but it isn't.
Sandy, can you tell us what MBD stands for?
Sure, it's very easy. I married the boss's daughter. Went straight to the top.
Married boss's daughter. Sandy could have put anything on this card. He could have put director of operations. He could have put nothing. Instead, he had to remind everybody in a very funny way, but a very sarcastic way, that he was there for one reason. To Sandy, there was something bittersweet about this is what he was telling everybody. I'm here because I married Marion Harper.
I started here the first day my father took over. In 1976, I was the cashier.
Once her dad Milton was gone and Marion still wouldn't let Sandy have a share of the deli, Sandy's actions took an even more nefarious, potentially deadly turn. He graduates from infidelity and handing over trade secrets to his mistress to being accused of outright theft.
He was caught hooking up Con Edison.
Con Ed, the gas and electric utility in Manhattan, discovered that the Carnegie had been siphoning off gas and electricity from one of its neighbors.
New York's famed Carnegie Deli is closed tonight because of a funny smell. We're not talking about when you have too much pastrami. Actually, if you take a look at the window behind me, store owners on one of the signs say it's because of repairs with Con Ed, but right next to it is a stop work order from city inspectors ordering all operations to be shut down after an illegal gas hookup was discovered here. Now, Con Ed issued the owners of Carnegie Deli a bill for $40,050 for 6 years worth of delivery of natural gas they believe was never paid for, and I'm told the deli owners paid that tab immediately.
Many years ago on the Lower East Side, there was a building that was collapsed or on fire because they had been siphoning off gas and electricity from a neighboring building, and the problems occurred, so it was very dangerous to do that. And it's a terrible event.
Sandy also hooked up the deli's electricity to someone else's meter.
I mean, something that I wouldn't even think of doing. You're not hurting a big company, you're hurting another person who's paying his electric bill. But, everyone has their own way. And it's not as if he wasn't making money there.